This happened about 10 years ago, give or take about a year. My friend Craig and I made plans to go hang out with our friend Jeremy and his new girlfriend. Neither of us had work the next day, so we grabbed some beers and made our way to Jeremy's mom's apartment complex, where Jeremy was temporarily staying. When we got there, we went out into the woods behind the apartment complex to drink. This wasn't just a little patch of trees, but a good-sized patch of forest. For context, this was in New York State. It was a nice fall day, late afternoon, and the sun was still out. We finished the beers and decided to go get more. So we go to the store and get some more beer, head back to the apartments and enter the woods. This was autumn, and the light outside was right at that stage where it starts to very quickly fade. We underestimated how dark it would be once we were in the woods, and how fast the light was fading away. We planned on making a fire, but didn't really count on it being so dark when we got back. So we're walking into the sort of clearing area, from where we can choose to head off in a few different directions. We're having a good time, laughing, talking, but something not too far in the distance catches my eye. It's too dark to tell, but I swear I can see a very large figure. No, that's too big. It's probably a tree, or just your eyes fucking with you. So as Jeremy is gabbing in the background, I ask Craig as an aside if he can see something standing up ahead, and he says nah, where? Oh wait, there, oh shit. We were still walking, and it was becoming clear I wasn't seeing things. There was a very large person standing in the forest up ahead, apparently facing us. So I tried to get Jeremy's attention without cluing the big guy in that we notice him, just in case something sketchy is going on, which I get the serious feeling there is. We tell Jeremy there's a person up ahead, but Jeremy is in a jovial no chill state, and he says, holy shit, is that Bigfoot? We humor him and laugh, but it's clear to Craig and I that this is actually creepy, and probably not a safe situation, and it's clear that Jeremy is not understanding that. It's hard to communicate the pacing of our approach onto the guy, but essentially we had gotten too close not to acknowledge him. Partially because it took us a moment to get Jeremy's attention, and partially because we weren't trying to just turn around and run like we were scared. There were 4 of us and 1 of him after all. But this was a big guy, not supernaturally big or anything, and not that he was jacked or anything like that, just a naturally gigantic dude, very tall and heavy without being particularly fat. And he was just standing there, in the middle of the forest, in the dark, alone. So as we approach this guy, and just sort of say hello, Jeremy, the absolute fool he was, gets way too close into this guy's personal space, as he enthusiastically tells him about how scary he looks standing in the woods alone. He says we thought he was an alien or something, and that he was just gonna jump out and attack us. To be clear, Jeremy's not trying to be intimidating or a jerk in any way. He's trying to be friendly and joking around with this guy, but he is literally leaning into this dude and practically sticking his hands in his face with his impression of an alien. And Jeremy's poor girlfriend, who was a few years younger than us and very shy, was clearly terrified, to which Jeremy was also oblivious. So Craig and I are both standing here trying to brainstorm a way out of this situation. Jeremy is too dense to get it if we say that we have to go, and we'll bring up the fact that we're going to have a fire later, and we were trying to seem confident and in control of the situation. The big guy says, "Oh, are you guys drinking? I have some drinks too," and he walks over to the tree line, where he has a bag laying beside a tree. He reaches into the bag, and while he grabs a beer with one hand, he sort of sneakily pulls something else out with his other hand and places it into his hoodie pocket. I'm convinced that it was a knife or a gun, probably a knife in all honesty. He then reapproaches us and cracks open his beer. I glance around casually, and then I notice something else. Someone else is out here. There's someone moving along the tree line to our left, a relatively good distance away, but someone else is here, and they're circling around as if to come up behind us. Fuck this. I need to leave now. So I go, well, I gotta work in the morning, and Craig's driving me home, so we gotta get out of here. And Jeremy, in his infinite wisdom, responds, "What? You say you didn't have work tomorrow?" I facepalm so hard on the inside. "No, Jeremy, you must have misheard me. I said I do have work tomorrow." And Jeremy, proving there's no end to his wisdom, says, "Alright guys, well it's been nice hanging out with you. Get home safe." He wasn't leaving the woods with us. Craig and I started walking away, and I told him about the other person circling to get behind us and that we needed to move. We started trying to brainstorm a way to get Jeremy and his girlfriend out of there, and decided to call him and tell him that his mom was out in the parking lot looking for him. Jeremy's terrified of his mom, Craig explains to me, and this should work because we clearly couldn't just call him and tell him the situation was not safe without him blurting out, "This guy isn't sketchy. I feel totally safe." Jeremy was mad at us for lying about his mom. I think his girlfriend appreciated it though. I'm not sure what was going on there that night. I've talked to several people about it over the years, and there are a few ideas. Did they know we were coming back? Were they waiting for us? Or did we stumble into something we weren't meant to? Almost everyone I tell about this says we stumbled into some type of drug deal, but something about that doesn't seem right. Who does a drug deal in the middle of the woods at night? I don't know. Very possibly a homeless dude with no ill intention, and another homeless dude with no ill intention. But it was a very creepy and scary situation. I was always an extremely small and sickly child. I looked young for my age. My family and I lived out of town, about 8 miles out. Our little community was next to a highway. The school bus would drop me off 2 blocks away from home. One day, I noticed a red truck following slowly behind me, so slow that I figured they were just looking for a house or something. I ignored it and walked to my house. Consistently, this truck would follow slowly behind me. After a couple of days of this, I walked into my house and looked out the window. I was always the first one home. Inside was an older man and a black lab. He was staring at me, idling inside his truck. Then he pulled away. I decided enough was enough. I told my parents. Of course, my sister was quick to jump in that I was lying. I had a habit of telling stories, but thankfully my mom believed me. She drove me to the bus stop the next morning. The red truck was there, across the street at the gas station, pointing towards the bus. I got on the bus, and my mom decided to drive around the truck. She described the scene. The man was disheveled and dirty, hunched over in his seat just staring at the bus. His license plates were caked in mud, so she couldn't make them out. It freaked her out so much she called the police in the school. I went to school and was quickly pulled into the office. The man had been spotted at the school, waiting in his truck. That day I rode the bus home. This time, the truck was parked alongside the street. I would have had to walk past this man's driver's side door to get home. I debated, considering running for it. Apparently this man was getting desperate now that he was spotted. A police car showed up and I talked to the policeman. They went to go talk to the man. He quickly pulled away from the curb and took off down the highway. I never saw him again, and I don't believe he was ever caught. Because of this experience, I'm extremely guarded and paranoid with my own daughter and her soon-to-be sibling. The world's a terrifying place these days, and children go missing so easily. I don't like to think about if I had been grabbed. I wouldn't be here typing this. My kids wouldn't exist. I was lucky. Many children aren't. Back when I lived in the rural Midwest, about 10 years ago, I lived in a house right off of the highway. My house was right between one town and another, almost right on the country line. Our house had a big circle driveway. If you drove in the driveway, you would be going straight towards our barn. If you curved right, you could pull into our garage. If you went past the garage, you could circle around in front of the house and pull back out to where you started. Our house had 2 large double doors in the front, which we rarely used. We always used the door that was inside the garage. One night, it was very late and my doorbell rang. My husband, my 3-year-old daughter, and I were all asleep. It woke me up and I thought maybe I was dreaming. It rang again. I woke my husband up. He thought I was hearing things until it rang again. It was very dark outside, but we have a dusk to dawn light, so most of the driveway is pretty lit up. Unfortunately, you can't really see the front door unless you open the door and look out. You can open just one at a time, or you can open them both by using 2 latch-like things that are in the top and bottom of one of the doors. My husband gets up and I follow him. He decides he is going to open the door, and I want to call the cops, but because we live on the country line, we know it's going to be a while before they can get here. He opens the door to a girl, maybe early 20s. She looks normal except for the fact that she's standing at my door in the middle of the night. I look past her, and her car is pulled into my driveway just off the road, not up the house or around the circle. She says she needs to use the phone. She says her car battery died or something. She's not sure, but she can't get it to start. I told my husband no fucking way. This is how horror movies start, and we offered to call the cops. She asks over and over, but I'm not letting her in. We tell her we'll call, and she kind of stomps off. We watch her walk back to the car maybe 50 feet away. I can see her car, and I can see her. I call the cops, and they say they'll be here as soon as they can. About 15 minutes. They don't sound very concerned, and at this point I'm not really either. I mean, it's just a girl. She probably does have a dead battery. She opens the trunk. No lights come on. She rummages around in the trunk. Then, the driver's side door opens. Out steps a guy. Then the back passenger door opens. Out steps one more guy. They all rummage around the trunk. No lights on. I can't hear anything, and I can't tell what they are doing. They all get back in the car. Now at this point, maybe 5 minutes have gone by, and I am silently praying that the sheriff puts his foot on the gas and gets here quickly, but I know it's going to be another 10 minutes or so. They just sit there in the car, lights off, not moving. I can't see them when they're in the car, but I know they're in there. I know they didn't get out of the car and walk past the house, because they would have had to walk right under the dusk to dawn light. I would have seen them. Then I see something. Someone walking towards the car from the right, coming from the direction of the barn. It's a man. I have no idea who this man is. We don't have a neighbor for at least a mile, and he's coming from the back of my property, which ends in a creek. He walks under the dusk to dawn light straight to the car. He doesn't look at the house. He just walks to the car and gets in the back. The car starts up and they slowly back out of my driveway and head north. The cops arrive about 10 minutes later, and at this point, I'm freaking out. They search around but can't find anything. They ask us if we got a license plate, but they were parked too far away. They tell us to call if they come back. My husband goes and gets his shotgun from the shop on our property, and we try to go back to sleep. They never came back. I don't know who those people were, and I don't know what they wanted. One year ago, I was on an app where you could talk to people who were within your area. I met a nice girl there, and we also had common interests. We hit it off right away and exchanged numbers and pictures. Everything was perfect, too perfect. She was all over me, saying stuff like you are very gentlemanlike, but she was obsessed with me, and I never had a girl like that before. Even though she wasn't the best looking girl, she made me feel a certain type of way. Then at some point, we wanted to meet. Normally on a Saturday afternoon, and had a great time. We went to her home and did the deed. I tried to sleep that day at her house, but she didn't want me to. I thought maybe she lost interest because of my poor performance, but couldn't be bothered at that point and went on with my day and left the house. But no, she didn't lose interest. She asked me if I arrived well after I got home 30 minutes later, and so on. Just normal texting about life and stuff. Until 2 weeks later, when I was done with my studies, I wanted to see her again, but something was different. The way she wrote, without emojis and more direct. When I wrote her, she almost instantly replied, which is kinda different because she always took her time. That's how I knew her, but I was horny as fuck and didn't care that much. But it was almost like another person was behind her phone. I didn't give a fuck and said I'd pick her up at her house, but no. She wanted to meet at a park, but when it was already dark outside, which is suspicious, but at the time it wasn't somehow. I asked her why there, and she told me not to ask any dumb questions, and said just be there on time. I replied LOL, okay. When I was there and waiting for her, she came 10 minutes later, but I didn't care to be honest. I was just so happy I could see her again. She parked her car, and I got a weird feeling. I knew something was terribly wrong here, but couldn't point out what. I checked the location and looked left and right to see if there was something wrong. I also checked the bushes so no one could ambush me. She didn't come out for the next 2 or 3 minutes. I couldn't see into her car because the windows were tinted, so I stood about 20 to 30 meters away. I was waiting for her to come out of her car, but she didn't. I was smiling at her car, probably because of nervousness, and thought she was playing an unfunny joke on me. But then suddenly, I got a call. I pulled out my phone and it was her. As soon as I pulled out my phone and saw her name, I heard doors open, but not one door, but two or even more. The way the car was parked was horizontal, so I couldn't see if there were more passengers who opened the door. But one thing I knew was that my body was instantly in fight or flight mode, and I knew something was extremely wrong here. I ran for my life, and didn't even look back to see who had exited the car. After I managed to escape, I deleted and blocked her number. I believe to this day she cheated on her boyfriend, and he somehow found out and wanted to beat me up or do even more serious harm. I heard all that shit in the news of how people lash out because of cheating wives and fiancés and didn't want to be another statistic.